So to give you a bit of an agenda for our half hour together, I'd like to start with a little practice, maybe 3, 4 minutes, and then I'll move into a bit of a presentation, bit of an overview of what I feel mindful eating is about. Recognizing there's some in the room new to the topic, and there's others that may have a great deal of related experience. And then we'll have some time to talk about how do we take this information today into our next meal this afternoon or this evening. Okay, so before we begin with the practice, maybe just checking your online environment and seeing if it feels supportive to practice. Is it the right lighting? Maybe you need to shift in your chair a bit. Maybe take a sip of water. But take your time to settle in. And this mindfulness practice is optional, like everything we do here. If you'd like to join in, it will be about 3 or 4 minutes, and the intention is to practice a moment of grounding, recognizing we've probably all come from busy days already. So, this practice comes from Deeper Mindfulness, a new 8 week course that I've been sharing. And the first practice in the whole 8 weeks is a grounding practice where you have an option to ground your attention into different regions of your body. So, I'll lead us through that. And again, because we just have a short little window of time together, it will be a fairly short practice. So finding a seat that works for your body, you could be seated, you could be lying down, you might even be standing. And check in if you want your eyes open or closed. It doesn't matter. You might even take a minute to look around the room you're in and then decide how you'd like your eyes for now. And then there's an invitation to bring your attention down into your feet. So see if you can allow your awareness to travel down into your feet, and you can even look at your feet or wiggle your toes if that helps you make contact with this region of your body. And as best you can, as you rest your attention at your feet, you might notice sensations, tingling or pulsing. And then from your feet, an invitation to draw your attention up to your seat. So, whatever parts of your body are connecting to the ground or the chair right now. For those seated, it might be the back of the legs, sit bones, maybe the low back. And for those lying down, maybe the back of your body, all the way from the heels to the top of the head. And then an invitation to shift your attention one final time into your hands. And you can even look at your hands or move your fingers, your thumbs, if that helps to acknowledge this area. And as you begin to rest your attention in your hands, you might again notice sensation or temperature. Maybe things feel a bit more dull or numb. So 3 areas you can always work with: your feet, your seat, or your hands, as a way to bring your attention down and into the body. In a moment, we'll close this short practice. An invitation to take in the room you're in. That might be through your eyes, That might be through your ears, and maybe it's through touch today. And checking in if there's any movement your body wants to make. My body feels like twisting a bit. Any sounds or sighs or yawns are welcome here. Okay. You're welcome to pop in the chat box any word to sum up your experience in that practice. Maybe one word or two words. Love to hear from you. Any one or two words to describe your practice there. Present. I put settling slowly, grounded, at home, centering, taking care of me, arriving, excited. Nice reminder to be aware. Yeah, for me too. Okay, so please feel free to keep those coming in. I love seeing where everyone's located too. I should mention I'm up north of Toronto on traditional territory of the Anishinaabe folks up here in what's known now as Lake Huron, Georgian Bay region. Got people in the UK, so we got lots of different time zones here. That's awesome. Welcome. Okay, so what I'd like to spend a few minutes doing is sharing some slides related to this theme of mindful eating. There we go. So, most importantly, warm welcome from all of us at the Mindfulness and Health Institute. I've put together a short presentation to give you an introduction to this topic today. And for some folks, it might be an introduction to the course I'll be offering in September on this subject. So I want to start by saying this is a subject very dear to my heart. It's what got me involved in mindfulness studies many years ago when I was in university and really struggling with disordered eating. And it was a naturopath that suggested mindfulness and took me to a meditation center. And she sat me down. She said, there's nothing wrong with you. I think you just need to learn to meditate. And that was the beginning of 20, 25 years now of studying this and designing this program. So this comes from the work of Jean Christeller, who created an 8-week program called Mindfulness-Based Eating Awareness, also through the work of Jan Chosen Bays, who has done a lot in this field of mindful eating as a MD, so a medical doctor, and also a Zen priest. So we've got an interesting combination of the Buddhist mindfulness practices with medical Western science. And then also my own work in mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy and somatic experiencing. So I offer this 8-week course with folks who want to work on their relationship to nourishment. Okay. So on behalf of MHI, I think it's really important to just acknowledge that we welcome all folks here today, all beliefs, all religions, all ages, all genders, all sexual orientations, all people are welcome here. So thank you for coming. Okay, so just in case you're wondering, again, that practice we did comes from deeper mindfulness. So that's a course I've been recently studying, and that's their opening practice. One you can come back to over and over with your feet, your seat, and your hands. Okay, so what is mindful eating? And I have a feeling if you're human, you're probably aware of what unmindful eating is or not eating mindful is. I think the way we generally eat in our Western dominant culture is in line with how we live in this culture. It's often fast paced, it's often automatic. And mindful eating, most importantly, invites us to become aware of not only what we're eating, but how we're eating. So, how we're preparing the food, how we're consuming the food. Um, and I like to think of it as mindful nourishment. We called the course mindful eating because we felt like people would kind of relate to that. But I see this as an opportunity every day to nourish myself with food. And I think it's a combination of using our inner wisdom, our inner knowing, our inner awareness, and then also what works best for our bodies, given our needs for that day. Okay. So it's also acknowledging our responses to food. So do we like something? Is something more neutral? Is it, do we not like it? In the Buddhist psychology, we think of this as our feeling tones. Is something pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And what I found was super helpful for myself when I was studying this course, and also when I work with folks, is many people came and said, I'm not aware of when I'm hungry. I'm not aware of when I'm full. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what that looks like. And so a lot of the work we do in the course from the first session is getting to know our own hunger cues based on different types of hunger and our own fullness cues. So we'll explore that more in a minute. Okay. And again, I mentioned this earlier with just kind of the mainstream culture, but this idea of moving from automatic pilot. And so I don't know about for you, but for me, eating can feel like a rush and feel like I've just got to get through it. Where even just taking that time to like yesterday, I was in a hurry to get out the door and I thought, no, Sarah, just come sit down at this table. And there was stuff all around me. The place was a mess. I was leaving for the night, but I was like, it's important just to sit, just to feel your feet on the ground, and that just that simple act of moving from the kitchen and bringing the food here allowed me that ability to get off automatic pilot or automaticity, as it's known. So, what does all this do? I think when we become more aware of how we're eating and what we're eating, we get to be free from these reactive patterns associated with food. And a lot of this work for me has come from the Buddhist traditions. And I do think of that tradition or the Buddhist psychology is a practice of liberation, a way to free ourselves from some of these habitual patterns that we picked up maybe from early childhood environments, maybe from our culture. Um, so there's a way to me that this is like a bigger picture, of a way to get free here, a way to liberate myself from these habitual patterns that aren't serving me, that are causing suffering, and also keeping in mind the bigger picture of the earth and how we eat in a way that reduces suffering on a global scale too. Okay. So, what I wanted to shift gears and talk about also is that for many of us, I know for myself, eating was a way to cope with stress. And I love this article because it comes from 1983. And I was thinking, oh, wow, people were stressed out back in 1983. Um, and the idea that stress is, any demand for change. So this was actually a term coined by a Canadian, Austrian, Hungarian endocrinologist. So someone interested in our endocrine system, our hormone system. So it's any demand for change. And so we can recognize that through life, as we know, the one thing constant is change. So how does the stress in the body impact how we eat, how we survive? So again, I love this idea of what is your escape route? And that's a quote from one of my teachers, maybe one of your teachers too, Pema Chodron, a Buddhist American author and retreat teacher. So she talks about, what's your escape route? And you can see the picture here. It says in small print, what do you eat for anxiety? So the idea that we all, sorry, I'm realizing I'm distracted because, of course, the lawnmower is right outside my window. So just give me a second. I'm just going to shut my window. Okay. Sorry about that. So yes, again, what is your escape route? And so for many of us, it's food, and for others, it might be alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex or shopping. But the idea is that we have these escape routes that we all know very well. We often take the same route over and over. And I think it was, Dr. Tara Brach also referred to these as false refuges. So we go to these things as a refuge, as a way to feel better, as a way to cope with the stress that is inevitable. And unfortunately, it can often lead us feeling worse. So, what's the alternative here? And so for me, recognizing that, we're all these nervous systems walking around all day, reacting in the service of survival. So we're animals who are just trying to survive here. And one of the quickest ways we let ourselves know we're safe and that we can survive is by feeding ourselves. So in the course, we talk a lot about the evolutionary impacts of how we're nourished, why we go for what's often known as the Holy Trinity. There's the sugar, the fat, the salt, or a combination of it. How does this relate to our real basic urges as humans to survive? And I wanted to share this quote because I think along with this like natural instinct to survive is that a lot of the stress we're feeling, or I can't speak for you, but for me, it's just this like rush, a feeling of like waking up this morning, Monday morning, with a million things to do and feeling like I don't have the time, let alone the time to really slow down and eat. I wanted to draw from this book, The Slow Down Diet. And I appreciate this book because it's not so much about, eat this or don't eat that. It's like, again, how do we eat for pleasure? How do we eat for energy? And this is a quote by a travel author and Buddhist named Pico Iyer, you might be familiar with. And they said, "We've lost our Sundays, our weekends, our nights off, our holy days, as some would have it. Our bosses, junk mailers, our parents can find us wherever we are at any time of day or night. More and more of us feel like emergency room physicians, permanently on call, required to heal ourselves, but unable to find a prescription for all the clutter on our desk." So again, you might relate to that. I think I felt that this morning, that this like the energy in my system was like it was an emergency. But really it's a to-do list that I will get through this week. But that feeling of anxiety or feeling of threat can often lead to emotional eating as a way to soothe that anxiety. So I love this idea from the psychology of eating, which is related to that book I just showed. That the real digestive aids are relaxation and time. So, what does that look like? It might look like what I did yesterday, like true story, rushing out the house, realizing I needed to eat lunch, not really feeling like taking the time, but coming over here, sitting down, and just taking a moment to like, I remember just feeling my feet on the ground, feeling my seat in the chair. And did I sit here for an hour and have lunch? No, but did I at least sit down, and was aware I was eating? Um, Again, was a helpful example from yesterday. So we are invited in mindful eating to try one thing at a time, which is really challenging. There's a lot of research looking at what we're doing while we're eating, and it's things like, as you can guess, being on the computer, conversing with others. Um, what were the other ones? Reading, writing. So again, a lot of distraction. So this idea of when sitting, just sit. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. When talking, just talk. When listening, just listen. And it goes on and on. But you might even look at that list, and maybe for you today, there's one that stands out. It might be eating. It might be even taking the first couple bites of your next meal um, in presence, and then turning on the Netflix, or then checking the phone. But taking a moment, I think, can really take us out of that spell of automaticity, and maybe even just picking one meal a week where there's no devices. And again, in an ideal world, none of us would have smartphones and we'd all be spending 40 minutes having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I also try to be realistic here, that even a moment of taking a minute to acknowledge what you're up to is helpful, is again that digestive aid that moves us out of that stress response, that fight or flight, that when we're in, we are not digesting our Cheerios. We are in a state of like high hyper alert. We want to survive, and so we're not going to take the time to worry about digestion. We're going to put all our energy into our limbs to run or to fight. Okay. I just had to throw in a comic. So today I will live in the moment unless the moment is unpleasant, in which case I will eat a cookie. So in the course, we talk a lot about, recognizing what is pleasant, what is unpleasant, what is neutral for us, not just as far as food, but as far as the moment. And then how does that lead us to maybe one of those false refuges or that escape route? Um, and I think I just want to pause. And I think, I know for me, I'm now just, I have a half hour to present a PowerPoint and connect with you, but I think I just want to say on a personal level that um, even just talking about a lot of this stuff for many years was super activating for me. So if there's people in the room today that are like, um, this is challenging for you, I understand as best I can, having my own experience of it. And yeah, acknowledging that for many of us, this creates a great deal of suffering in our life. So I just wanted to name that along with a comic there. Okay. So one thing that we do in the course that I find very exciting, and I know we don't have much time, but I wanted to introduce the topic here. So Jan Chosen Bays, I mentioned, is one of my mindful eating heroes. She, again, is that, for me, great combination of Buddhist psychology and Western medicine. And she came up with these 9 types of hunger. And so in the course, we explore what that looks like. So the first 5 are through our senses, and that might be kind of obvious, like you walk by a bakery and you smell it, and next thing you know, you want a croissant. Even right now, maybe me just hearing about that could make you want a croissant. Eye hunger, walking by something, seeing it, wanting it, etc. But I think it gets interesting when we get into the from about 6 on, because we start to see how our stomach hunger is the part of us that's like the physical organ of the stomach's actually empty, and we need something to fill that to feel full. Cellular hunger, where we start to crave different foods. So I always start craving oranges when I know I'm going to get sick. So things like that. Mind hunger, that's the hunger that's like the realm of shoulds, and I should have this much protein before 7 a.m., or I should have this, I shouldn't have that. Um, and then the last one that, again, many of us know well is this heart hunger, this emotional hunger. That is what we look at a lot in the course. Like, how do our emotions and our thoughts then impact how we eat or not eat? Because there's people in the course that some people struggle with eating too much, too often. Other people don't eat enough. Other people are unable to eat. Other people are eating and purging. So we have lots of different ranges in the groups usually. Um, but again, the idea of the 8 weeks for me is to provide psychoeducation and mindfulness practices for you to explore this on your own and hopefully with support. So I think we're almost at time here. So I'm going to just end with gratitude. So, what I invite you to do today, if you don't already have this as part of your practice with eating, is to see mindful eating as an actual practice. So, just as important as a body scan or a 5-minute breath practice in the morning. And it might be as simple today as starting with, like, thank you. I often like will hold my plate or bowl and just say, like, may this food nourish me until my next meal, or thank you for this food. Might be just even a silent nod, maybe acknowledging the farmers or the plants or the animals. So offering gratitude, I think, could be a great starting place for everyone. And then a couple other ideas. The first one might seem very basic, but sharing a meal with other humans, talking about what you or what you're eating, what you're observing, and then checking in with a scale. So we use the intuitive eating scale in the course, and I'll pull that up in a second so you can see it. But the idea is to start to get to know the interoceptive awareness. So interoceptive awareness meaning, like, what are we noticing in the body before we eat, and then when we realize we're getting full, once we learn those cues. Um, Maybe even just taking 1 breath, 1 to 3 breaths before you eat today. Pausing, putting down, if you're using a utensil or a chopstick, putting that down, taking a breath. Just acknowledging what you're up to here. Um, yeah, a couple other things. Again, turning off devices. I know families have different plans for that, putting the devices in a box during a meal. There's been some studies that show even just having a phone on the table can impact conversation, even if no one's looking at it. A mother on a phone while breastfeeding will impact the amount of nutrients the child or the infant is getting, depending on how present the mom is. So, as we know with other areas of our life, awareness does matter, and how we eat, why we eat does matter. And the last one I just want to acknowledge on this list is eating until we're 80% full. So in the program, we talk about the blue zones, so areas in the world where people have lived the longest. And one of the kind of common things we see is diet, how they're eating, um, and this idea of eating until you're about 80% full. So I'm going to stop my share there. And I just want to pull up before we close because I know I have 1 minute. Let's pull up the scale. So just give me one more second here. So one thing I found, there we go. Okay. So this is the intuitive eating scale that we use in the course. And there's different versions of this, but I found this helpful. And again, we could look at this and say, oh, this is so easy. You just pick a number. But again, as I mentioned, for many folks, including myself, I had no idea. Like I couldn't really tell when I was hungry or full. I couldn't tell the difference between anxiety or excitement. I couldn't tell the difference between all those types of hunger. So if it interests you right now, you might even notice on this scale, where are you? Recognizing it's midday for those of us in the Eastern time zone. For the person in the UK, you're probably thinking about dinner. So where are you? Is the tank, so we're talking about the organ of the stomach, is it empty? Meaning it needs food, it needs nourishment, it needs calories. Or are you feeling like the opposite? You're really full, like they describe that one sometimes like after a big holiday meal or something. So you might continue to use this throughout the day, and generally they recommend we eat around, the 4 to the 6. Yeah. So thank you for your time. Yeah. Have a great day and feel free to stick around or open your mic and say goodbye.